not too many places in America have a name that says like Pirates Alley. And originally the name for the place was Orleans Alley South, which I don't really think that's rolling off the tongue for anybody. But the question becomes like, why does this thing have the name Pirates Alley? It's very unusual. What's really strange about it is we don't actually know exactly where it comes from. The oldest date that it goes back to is 1926. And that's when they had a store there that had the name for like, it was like Pirate's Chest or something. So that name gets associated with it, at least officially at that point. But it appears that it probably had that nickname before. Now, the answer that I'm going to give on tour, if somebody asks me, the most likely one I think, is that it was the jail behind the Cabildo. Because you get the Cabildo, that was the Spanish government house, that's where Napoleon's government was briefly, and then the American government. And if you go in the Cabildo Museum and you look out those back windows they have when you're in the exhibits, if the back windows are open, so you can see the jail cells they kept those men in. Now, the pirate Jean Lafitte, and by the way, he would not want to be called a pirate. He said that he was a privateer. You know, the privateer actually has legal sanction for what they're doing. A privateer, say, works for the French and attacks the Spanish, for instance. In his case, he was working for what is today Venezuela and attacking the Spanish, at least according to Jean Lafitte. But whatever, we'll call him a pirate. And, you know, they're very successful down there in Barataria Bay, the area south of New Orleans, a swampy area with this large bay you can keep a lot of ships in. And then whatever goods they stole, they would smuggle through the swamps, get them to New Orleans and other designated places. Well, the thing is, the pirates, there are certain merchants who don't like them, of course. They're being undercut by them because the pirates sell their stuff at a discount. That way they can move it quickly. But also the U.S. Navy's upset with them. It's an international incident, too. The Spanish are complaining because they mostly did attack Spanish ships. And so the U.S. Navy sailed in there and sank a bunch of their warships in 1814 and captured about roughly 100 of the pirates. Jean and his brother Pierre Lafitte escaped, though, so they probably had word what was going to happen and just ditched out. Well, 100 of Jean Lafitte's men are then imprisoned behind the Cabildo. They're there for a few months until Andrew Jackson arrives. At first, Andrew Jackson wanted nothing to do with the pirates, but he's convinced about three things. He's told, one, they'll fight for him in battle. And these guys are good in a battle. And not just that, most of those pirates down there were Frenchmen who had been ejected from the Caribbean by the British. So if you tell these guys you want to shoot some British guys, they're in, okay? Second, gunpowder and other supplies. The pirates have been stealing things for years. They had a lot of gunpowder and gun flints, and Andrew Jackson needs the supplies. And also, for the British to attack New Orleans, they've got to go through the bayous that surround the city. And these men know the bayous better than anybody else. So Jackson reluctantly agrees to have them on. And very soon, Jackson and the pirates got along extremely well. So at any rate, though, those pirates were in jail. Then they say, come on out and fight the British. They say, God bless America. And I think that's why it's called Pirates Alley, probably, is because the jail where they housed pirates, and then a bunch of them were there. So you start the pedestrian mall, the Charters. You got the big cathedral right there in front of you, the Cabildo on one side, Jackson Square behind you. There you go, the musicians playing, the tarot card readers, occasional other odd performer, Lucky Dog stand, and you're going down, and you're going down on the left-hand side is the Cabildo, which is where the Louisiana Purchase was finalized. Your right-hand side is St. Louis Cathedral. And keeping in mind that the first thing the French built when they came here in 1718, the first thing they built is a church. Not that church, but the first thing they built was a church at that site. And then you go down, and then to your left, Pirates Alley Cafe. And Pirates Alley Cafe is the closest bar to an active church in all of America. Now, Pirates Alley itself is roughly 16 feet wide, size, length of a great white shark, a big great white shark. Although not the biggest, those get up to 20 feet. Pirates Alley Cafe is in a little bit of a narrow area, so it's only 14 feet. The size of a big tiger shark. And then you get past that, to your right is a St. Anthony Gardens, St. Anthony Square, St. Anthony Park. I've heard lots of names for it. There are a few people buried there. There's a monument there to French sailors who helped out during a yellow fever epidemic. And also, That is the place where they used to fight sword duels in the French and Spanish colonial period. To your left is Faulkner House Books. William Faulkner wrote his first novel and his first short stories, or his transition from being an unknown poet to becoming one of the most famous prose authors in America. Then you go down a series of shops, and then you're at Royal Street. The entire length of that is 600 feet. But now that I'm saying all this, that has to be the most unusual alleyway maybe that I've ever went down. Think of all the history that's packed right in there. Artistic, cultural, economic, major historical events, just down from the Charter Street Pedestrian Mall, all the way to Royal Street. But I always like to joke that maybe we should actually just call it Faulkner Alley because, the pirate part, there's all debate about were they even really hanging out here or whatnot. Faulkner, we know he was there. He lived in the home that is today a bookstore, which is behind Pirates Alley Cafe. And Faulkner's there because in the 1920s, Prohibition is on the books, alcohol's banned everywhere, New Orleans becomes known as the easiest city in the country to get a drink. And William Faulkner wrote his first novel and his first short stories living right next door to Pirates Alley Cafe. And his second novel, Mosquitoes, is set in 1920s New Orleans. But here's my favorite thing, though. My theory, my guess on why he lived there was because of the church. Catholic Church could still get wine for sacramental purposes. So some Catholic churches in America, including the St. Louis Cathedral, would sell the excess wine out the back of the church to their parishioners. So Faulkner could leave there, get a bottle of wine, and go right back in. And I like to say that in the pantheon of alcoholic authors, William Faulkner might be the most alcoholic of all of them. The guy really needs a drink. So in many ways, I think it should probably just call Faulkner Alley. But regardless of all that, I think it's very telling that in New Orleans, we don't know what the name of Pirates Alley exactly comes from. Because, of course, we got plenty of streets names that make sense, right? Claiborne Avenue, that's the first American governor of Louisiana. Iberville and Bienville are right next to each other, of course. They were brothers. Iberville founded Louisiana, Bienville founded New Orleans. We got lots of names that make sense. Then you got ones that don't make sense. You go to Lakeview, there's one called General Diaz. Some people don't even know that's named after a World War I general. The name is so lost to history. One that really interests me is a place I used to live on, Naron Place. Nobody knows what the hell a Naron is. And I think it's also fitting that we have a place like Pirates Alley where we wonder and we look at it and go, where does this name even come from? And I think that is very, very fitting for New Orleans.